For this week's video, we're going to review lesson 8, and you're jumping into editor to digitize parking lots on the Mount Hood Community College campus. Now, a couple things may have happened to you. One is when you downloaded this file, you most likely ended up with a mosaic boundary that looked something like this. And if we zoom to that layer, you're going to note that the file's been corrupted. So there's a couple things that you can do when this happens. One is obviously it's not going to work for you to digitize. So you're going to need to bring in both aerial images which have not been mosaicked. When it's mosaicked, all that means is that these two images have been combined into one useful image. Not that it's useful when it doesn't load and looks you know, like the background there. The other option that you could do is within your catalog tree, you could take the previous week's mosaic that you had here, and we could drag that in. So if I bring that over here, drop that guy in, it's going to have some different, you know, some issues because we haven't converted it in terms of projections. And it looks like that one's going to have the actual same issue. So I'm not quite sure what's wrong with that file, but obviously it's not going to be useful for us. So we want to use these two aerial images, and realistically, you only almost need the one to get majority of the parking lots on the campus. It's when you get down here into these back lots that you need this this second image, or actually the first section. Once you've got the images loaded, the next thing you're going to need to do is within your Geo Database. So whatever Geo Database you're working in, I just happen to be using this MHCC ownership one here, and I just recreated or created a feature class called parking lots. So to go over that, you just right click here, you're going to point to new, and you're going to create a feature class. And you're going to name this whatever you want, parking lots, and you want to make sure that it's a polygon feature. So I'll do that real quick. And I'm going to call mine parking lots 2 because I already have one called parking lots, and GIS will not take that. So make sure it's polygon feature. We're going to go through, click next. This is where you're going to want to grab your coordinate system from one of your layers. I'm going to actually take it from this imagery because I don't want to reproject it. So I'm going to put everything into the same projection as this image. So you can click down here on the layers. It shows that there's two different projection coordinate systems. The other option here is to import it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to select import, and I'm going to run it to that TIFF file. So grab one of those TIFF files, go ahead and hit add. So it's going to put that into this North FIPS. We're going to say next. Here it's just talking about when things would be considered the same in terms of occupying the same location, XY coordinate. So I usually just take the default. That's pretty good. It's 0.003. So yeah, 0.003 of a foot, pretty tight. Here we're going to take the default as well. And then this is where you're going to add into your attribute table. So I'm going to take a couple things. One, I'd say parking lot or parking number. And if you just want to type that in, you can do that here and make that text. The default length here of 50 characters is a little big, so I usually change that to about 10 characters, 50 being, you know, 2 alphabets essentially. And then we're going to hit finish. And we've essentially then created our shell for our parking lots that we're going to go ahead and digitize. I've added a couple in here just so you can kind of see the level of digitizing that I would expect. So if we zoom to that layer, you know, you may want to include the approaches to that if you want. I've given a couple different examples here. And I was going to run through just how I would digitize with this 6-inch resolution. We can actually see the parking lot pretty well. So to do that, to digitize in, I'm going to digitize in this parking lots one that I had already previously made. I'm going to go up to editor, start editing. I'm going to have all sorts of spatial issues because I haven't corrected my projections, which I would expect you to do. So I want you to do that beforehand. Put everything in the same spatial projection as these images. And then make sure that once your editor is on, you have your create features dialog box available. So mine is over here on the side of my screen, and I'm going to just select parking lots. I have to move myself up here a little bit and then make sure I'm selected on polygon. I cannot urge you enough to go through the textbook and do the exercises so that you get a chance to use these different tools up here in editor. There's many different tools in here. I use this trace feature frequently, but it is a little cumbersome to deal with. So run through the process of how to do that. Editor is extremely helpful, but for all intents and purposes, we can digitize this particular parking lot pretty easily, just with straight segment. So I don't need to do any arcs or anything like that. So I'm looking at my photo interpretation here. You can see the edge where the asphalt meets the vegetation, somewhere right around in this region. So I'm just going to drop in my vertices. And every time you add a vertex like there, I'm not real happy with that one. That one's actually not too bad. If it was a little bit too far down, I can always go up here and use my undo button, or I can edit the vertices at a later point. So I'm just going to digitize along here, putting in the edge of the parking lot. Now you're going to have to kind of interpret where that would possibly be based upon the vehicles. And you can see I'm kind of dipping down here. So I'm gonna edit that here in a minute, and I'll show you how to do those just individual vertices. It's like car back into there, so somewhat up in this region. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to be pretty darn close. You can still kind of see the edge. Now the other thing is you might want to change your fill on your polygon so that it's not filling over top of this, because sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult to interpret where this vertex would go. So then when I'm done, so I'm done at this point, I'm going to double left click on my mouse, and that's going to lock in that polygon. If I wanted to edit that polygon, those vertices like down here where they kind of dip down, it's not real uniform. I'm just going to use my edit tool, and then I'm going to just double left click to get those vertices to pop up. And then you get this toolbar, the edit vertices. But anytime I drag over or sit over top of one of these vertices, I can move it. So that's what it would look like if I saved those edits. So, and sometimes you'll see it's going to snap back to that. That's my snapping environment that I have up here enabled. So I'm going to turn those off just so that vertex doesn't pop to where it was. So I'm just going to edit these up just a touch, just to show you how you can edit those individual vertices. If you don't like those vertices, you can always just go over here and delete them, get rid of them, right? So that will get rid of those vertices, and then we can add vertices back if you wanted to. And then we can edit those vertices. So you see, you just need to play with this with editor. Okay, so we'll call that pretty decent. Move this guy up here a little bit, and we'll move this corner vertex. Okay, now we'll go up to editor, save edits. That'll reconfigure our polygon and we're good to go. Last thing we need to do then is to add into our attribute table the letter for that. So you'll notice that it's null value. I've added the other ones in here. So I believe this is parking lot B. And so you'll just be able to type the letter into there. If you did not choose to use a domain, which is totally fine. If you did choose to use a domain, we're going to do that in actual ARC catalog. So I need to editor stop editing. I'm going to save those edits, yes. And then I'm going to go over to actual ARC catalog, and I was going to show you where you make those domains. So you got to go through the lesson again, but the goal is that you generate the domain. So you make the domain within the Geo Database, and then you apply it within the feature class. So we're going to go into the properties of the Geo Database, and you only have 2 tabs in those. That's where I always kind of remember that. There's already some existing domains based upon what I had in this which is just a streams layer that I had already previously added. So you're going to generate this new domain. You can just call it parking lots. Notice that it cannot have any spaces on this side. Okay, so no spaces over here in the domain name. If you have to give it a description. So these would be MHCC parking lots. And you can just make this information up. The field type for this, we're going to make this, you have to make it a text, okay? And you're going to make this coded values. And then this is where you would set in those coded values. So you could put in there, you know, A, B, C, D, you get the gist. So, and that would be, you know, parking lot A, and you give it a description. For this type of data, I would think that a domain is probably not critical. But when you have something that is, let's just click up here on one of these guys. We'll say, okay, it's because it doesn't like the rest of this. But when you have one of these where there's maybe multiple values, you don't want to have to retype this every single time, especially if there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of records. You just want to be able to select those from a drop-down menu. So once you're done, you just hit apply and okay. And then you would go into the parking lots layer properties, and under this value here, you can select a domain, and you should be able to pull in here. It have a drop-down value of text, or of it'll say parking lots, because it's this this text field. So it's not enabled in there because I just didn't finish it, but it should work for you. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll help you through that process. But in this situation, I don't necessarily think you need to have a domain. I think you can just, you know, type the individual letter into your editing session within your lot letter, and then label your parking lots based upon that letter. So, and how to do that, just to refresh here, is you cannot be editing, you know, once you've got, you have to be editing actually to enter these in, then save your edits, stop editing. And then you're going to want to label features. So here I just labeled my features. It's probably going to label it by object ID as the default. So you need to go into the layer properties, and you need to change that to the lot letter field. That way it will label it with the correct letter, as opposed to one of these other variables within the attribute table. So just change this field type here to lot letter. You can change a symbol in here as well, just so it matches the rest of your map. And that should get you the parking lots, you know, so that you'll just have to continue on the campus to digitize the remainder of the parking lots and put that together, make it match your PDF map, and you should be good to go. So hopefully that helps. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop by office hours. Thanks.